Today, representing the Metro West communities of the 2nd Middlesex and Norfolk District, comprised of Ashland, Framingham, Holliston, Hopkinton, Medway, and Natick, Senate President Spilka is dedicated to the advancement of progressive social causes and a pragmatic fiscal policy of balancing investments in education, infrastructure, and economic opportunity with saving for the future. She has championed issues such as mental health, juvenile justice, and services for the elderly and disabled communities. During her career, Senator Spilka has been a social worker, small business owner, and attorney, and she went on to become one of the first legislators in the nation to vote in favor of marriage equality and transgender protections. Karen Spilka's tenure as Senate President has included the legislature's response to the COVID-19 public health crisis. As a part of this response, the Senate President pursued the passage of Patients First legislation, which eliminates barriers to care and advanced support for community hospitals, COVID testing sites, medical staff, and telehealth services. Despite a crisis that resulted in budget cuts throughout much of the country, Senate President Spilka's leadership in establishing one of the most robust rainy day funds in the country allow Massachusetts to not only avoid cuts to social safety nets, but rather expand support for housing stability, food security, unemployment benefits, and relief for the hospitality and restaurant industries. Senator Spilka's first priority as Senate President was the passage of the Student Opportunity Act, the culmination of a 20-year effort which combined the largest increase in education funding in Massachusetts history with changes to make future education funding more equitable. In the wake of protests stemming from the murder of George Floyd, she led the effort to pass one of the most comprehensive and intentional police reform bills in the United States, including the creation of a first-in-the-nation civilian-led commission with the power to independently investigate police actions. In response to the threat posed by climate change, she supported a law which provided a timeline for a complete transition away from fossil fuels and towards a carbon-neutral economy, and which codified the concept of environmental justice into law. Most recently, Senator Spilka has led a number of efforts to decrease the barriers to accessing quality mental health care, including directing state funding towards public awareness of mental and behavioral health, as well as to increase the mental health workforce pipeline. She has also introduced the concept of intergenerational care centers as a way to address the caregiving crisis in Massachusetts, providing support for women in the workforce and encourage high-quality caregiving for all residents from infants to elders. Let us give a warm Brotherhood welcome to Senate President Spilka.
So good morning. Well, everybody has had coffee, which is great. And this terrific breakfast, probably the best breakfast, well, no doubt the best breakfast in the city. And it's with a warm thank you to all of the Brotherhood members for providing it, for cooking it. You know, you get here a lot earlier and it doesn't just show up. They spend hours doing this for these breakfasts and allowing us to meet and break bread together and socialize and hear from people who speak. Hopefully they have something to say, including myself. So thank you. Thank you. Yep. We can decide that at the end of my speaking, okay? I want to thank Rabbi Sam Blumberg, Carol Hanover, the Temple Executive Committee President, Temple Beth Am Executive Committee, Steve Schneider, who for all that you do in heading up the Brotherhood, all of the Brotherhood members for all that you do. And I'd like to acknowledge my fellow elected officials. Representative Jack Lewis is here, my partner up at the State House in getting things done for Framingham. Thank you. Great team member. And Jen, Adam, and Rich from the school committee. Mayor Szycki, it's great to have you with us and to see you as always. And I do want to acknowledge and thank Chief Baker, Deputy Chief Riley, And we have officers Curtis and Henry as well. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Framingham's finest are here with us. And I want to give them all a round of thanks. Yes. We recently in the Senate, you may have heard, did a gun safety bill. Massachusetts currently has among the strongest gun safety laws in the country, but there were some things that we focused on. And we worked in the Senate very closely with the Police Chief Association, the police, to make sure what we did made sense. I mean, you know, the police deal with this day in, day out. And my feeling is, going to the experts on whatever issue it is makes the most sense. So I really appreciate all the time, energy, and input the police chiefs and the police put into the bill to make it stronger, even still without infringing on Second Amendment rights. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for everything you do every day. Thank you. I do just want to also mention and talk about what I heard at the Framingham City Council meeting last week. I just want to hit that head on because I know all of us are living at a time when the world is scary. There's so much going on and there's just so much we all have control over or not. I was disgusted by the comments that were made, the anti-Semitic comments. And I do just want to say that we all need to still continue to be vigilant and make sure, because there's no place for anti-Semitism or any hate in Framingham, Metro West, or I would say Massachusetts. This is not what we stand for. As a Jewish woman, I am proud. I have spent my career fighting to make Massachusetts more welcoming to everyone. And I promise you that I will never stop advocating for every member of our faith and of any faith to be able to practice their religion proudly or not practice a religion if that's what their choice is, without fear. I think that that's really important that we all continue to stand for that. I grew up in a family. Thanks. I grew up in a family, where Tikkun Olam was a really important part of our life and means repairing the earth, leaving. It sort of reminded me when my boys got older and entered the Boy Scouts, and it was you'd go into the woods and you would leave it in better shape than where you found it. Tikkun Olam is sort of that same feeling, but it's a deep belief in doing whatever you can to repair the world, make things better, improve quality of life for others. And, it's something that it's not a surprise. I grew up in a family. Some of you know this, many of you may not. My sister had Down syndrome. I was her legal guardian later on in her life, for most of her life. I moved her up here from New York. She lived off of Scott Road in Framingham in a group home. My father had major mental illness and left a lot of trauma in our family because of it. And I always felt if I ever had the chance to try to make a difference. So since I've been, it's not a surprise, I started out as a social worker, then became a lawyer from Northeastern Law School, arbitrator, mediator. So I specialized in conflict resolution. And I have to tell you, I did a lot of community court mediation for Framingham and then the Metro West mediation program. Those skills really helped me, I believe, be a better senator, be a better Senate president, by training people in active listening. What are they really saying? So it's something, and I do that with whatever bill we're working on. We meet with whoever wants to meet. We listen to what they have to say. I will always listen to almost anybody. I may not agree with them, but I will always listen. So that's how I ended up where I am now. I never, ever thought of being a state senator, let alone Senate president. I'm really honored and humbled that the other senators, 39 other senators, it's been a unanimous bipartisan vote ultimately to elect me as Senate president. And I really take that seriously, and I'm still honored by it. And I look at it in a lot of ways as I'm still doing social work. You know, I'm helping people on a day-to-day basis sometimes, and I have Dennis Giambetti from my office here. You can give him a round of applause. You know, he's my district guy. We have several district people who, if we get calls that people need help, we try to cut through some of the red tape that you may be experiencing in dealing with state agencies or asking questions. Often we can help. Sometimes we at least listen again, but we can sometimes get you in touch with people who in the state government, state bureaucracy, actually, sometimes we can help cut through some of that. So I offer that. Feel free to, at any time, call my office, get in touch with us if there's ever anything that you believe that we can help with. But I do want to just thank all of you for standing strong, and all of us, you know, with the support. We're having a hard time with Israel right now that we know. I won't get into all of that, but it's really an emotional time for all of us. And I think that we need to continue to be together, stand together as a community. So I thank you. This temple has done a great job. We have Lino from JFS here who has really led with these issues as well. And for that, Lino, we thank you too. Lino was one of the first that got the security grants that we put in the budget to strengthen the security. Unfortunately, we need to do that still, but hopefully it's helped many facilities. So that's sort of how I got to where I am today as Senate President. It still sometimes surprises me that, but again, I still feel like I'm doing social work. So I'd like to just go through a little bit of what I'm hoping or have done for Framingham and worked on. As Senate President, I'm proud to have marshaled our state's resources to make investments right here in Framingham. And that's where tag teaming with Jack Lewis has been great, because it needs to get both through the Senate and the House. One of those investments that I'm very proud of, and I've been working on this for probably at least 8 years, probably at the start of the Charlie Baker administration, which is now 9 years ago, is the development of a new regional justice center. I am really pleased to have secured the funding necessary for it to be built in the vacant Danforth building downtown, keeping the Regional Justice Center in Framingham, in downtown, to help economic development downtown as well. It will really be a springboard. It'll create a hub, a new centralized hub for people in our region seeking justice. It would be a combination of the district court, which I think all of you know on Concord Street. It's been there for ever, basically. It needs a lot of work, but it's the district court. It's the court. If you've ever been in the courtrooms, there's not enough. They're small. It's not a real functioning courthouse. So the Regional Justice Center would house the district court, housing court, which we passed the law to allow Framingham to have a housing court, but there's been no space in Framingham, so it literally is situated in Marlborough. I want to bring it back to Framingham where it belongs. So district court, housing court, and juvenile court, all under one roof to service the people of Framingham and greater Metro West. It would be close to the public transportation, the Metro West RTA, the trains, the commuter train. And I can't overstate my pride. This was not an easy one to get to keep in Framingham or Metro West. I fought really hard for this regional justice center because there were a lot of people who were wanting to push it out of Framing all the way to Waltham or beyond, which didn't make sense to me. So, we've secured it. It's in the beginning stages of being designed. And it really will bring so much more than access to justice for all of our residents. The influx of money for redevelopment from the state is going to foster, this is over $60 million for this, is going to foster a thriving economic hub right in the center of Framingham. It will spur, and this has happened in other cities across the state when justice centers have been built, with restaurants and shops and other things. So it really will help develop Framingham downtown as well. And we know that, as I mentioned, the RTA goes through there. The commuter train would bring people. So it's just steps away from our regional transit infrastructure. So people from the entire region can get onto public transportation, train or bus, and get dropped off practically right in front at their front door. So that's not something that we should take for granted. When I started as state senator, I became state senator in 2005. It's been a few years. The first thing on my agenda was to change the law to allow us to create a regional transit authority. We were actually prohibited from creating because we were part of the T, a little part of the T, and Boston reps and senators constantly fought us creating one because they were afraid our public dollars would be taken from the T. We changed the law. I fought really hard to change the law. We created the RTA. Framingham was the first community to start the RTA. I think Dennis was on the select board at the time. We did a little traveling road show to go to a lot of the other communities. And I have to say, I'm really proud that the RTA has grown from just Framingham to 13 communities as part of this transit authority, knitting the fabric of these communities together more than just transportation. It's great to be at some of the meetings for this because when people get together and talk, they talk more than just transit or buses. They talk about other issues in their communities, and it's really fostered a more feeling of unity and knitting the fabric of these 13 communities together. So it's been a really exciting thing to see. But the Regional Justice Center and for Framingham, we need more than just public transportation. As you know, so many people bring their cars in too. So I was successful in securing $2.5 million for the design of a new parking garage in downtown Framingham that'll go right next door to the City Hall and a block away from the Regional Justice Center. When the ribbon is cut, the garage will open access to the downtown area even more. And so a few months ago, the State Department of Environmental Protection, the other thing that before I go on to something else, I do want to mention, I'm not certain people realize this. The other thing, particularly when the state got a lot of environmental funding, we all know the general chemical site and that it was just sitting there and needed cleanup. We got the state legislators, we got the state Department of Environmental Protection to put a little excess funds they had to do some cleanup, but there was still a lot that was necessary. And the federal EPA declined to give us funds to clean up general chemical. So I am very honored to say that I was able to secure $12 million to clean up the general chemical site. Finally get it done. Yeah. That's been around for far too long. Toxic site, toxic polluted site that the water, groundwater, we know travels, and concern about going to residences, heading throughout Framingham, surrounding towns, and just spreading. This $12 million will enable the State Department of Environmental Protection to finally clean that site up for Framingham. So that's very exciting. Next year, we anticipate the work to finally begin on this environmental justice priority. It's lingered for far too long, particularly, as you all know, the Harmony Grove School is right there. And we need to ensure that the site is safe for our little ones and kids of all ages, basically. So I'm happy to report that work is getting done. Framingham Schools, it's great to have some of the school committee members here. I started out Ashland School Committee, no idea I'd end up, in the Senate or Senate President, but it did give me a great basis for being a legislator as well. The state, I'm really happy to report, the state is making and continuing to make record investments in Framingham K-12 programs. When I first ran for state rep from the Ashland schools, I learned about how poorly the state funded our education system, K-12. I had formed a statewide coalition to lobby the state house. I ran for state rep thinking that it would be good to fight from within the system than from without. Ran for Senate, that stayed with me slowly, trying to, a bunch of us in the state house trying to get support. So, and Framingham was like the poster child for what was wrong with the state Chapter 70 education funding system. So I vowed to change that and get Framingham the money that it needed and our kids and education system deserved. So I'm really proud that I became Senate President in 2018. The first major bill that I pushed through the legislature was the Student Opportunity Act, which changed the Chapter 70 K-12 education funding. So on one hand, you think that's great, I was able to do it. On the other hand, you think, holy cow, that was almost 20 years of working on this. The legislative process can go very slowly, but when it happens, wow, what a bang that was. We totally revamped the formula, put $1.5 billion into it. And even during tough times, the last few years, we have stayed firm with our commitment for K-12 funding. And Framingham has finally gotten the funding that it needs and deserves. A dramatic boost for funding for the K-12 system. In fact, this fiscal year, Framingham K-12 funding increased 23%. And the year before that, it increased 20%. Those are big, significant increases. Yeah. So, that's been great. I'm also proud to have supported and put millions of dollars in the budget for funding social and emotional learning for our kids. getting more help, particularly during and after COVID. Our teachers are struggling with still the effects of COVID. Our kids are still struggling with it. We need to continue to help them. And I believe that their learning loss will not be fully made up unless and until we help them make up their social and emotional learning loss as well. So we'll continue to put funding in for that. Framingham has done a great job in embedding wonderful social and emotional programs for our kids here, embedding it right into the schools. So that's great. I've also led support to help more funding for school facilities, help secure funding for a new Fuller Middle School, and worked with my colleagues to help a new Southside Elementary School be accepted into the Massachusetts School Building Authority program. Yeah, so there's a lot happening. I mean, there really is a tremendous amount of great stuff happening in Framingham. And the same goes for higher education. A couple of weeks ago, I stood next to Governor Healy, Mass Bay President Dave Podell, and cut a ribbon on a beautiful new building. I hope all of you go by and take a good look at it. I actually would stop right across from the Perini building, across from the new development, and you could see it over the months go up. I'd be stopped at a red light and I would take a picture. So I have a whole bunch of successive construction pictures of that, and it's wonderful to see. This is truly a state-of-the-art building. You go in there and you can't help but say, wow. It will produce, Mass Bay is really helping our region get more, develop our workforce. They will produce state-of-the-art nursing, health sciences, early education, human services. These are jobs that we need desperately in the Metro West right now. Human service nurses, there's a severe nursing shortage, and a lot, Mass Bay's enrollment has gone up. They are now looking at an evening nursing program to help get more nurses into our state, which I think will be great. And I think that might help our lower the overall cost of healthcare as well. It's a beautiful facility. You walk in and those who are studying to be an EMT, you go into the room and you walk up where they have the stretcher, and you have to be careful because with the touch of a button, the stretcher can start moving as if you are in an ambulance and you're traveling at high speed. So really practicing how to deliver healthcare and medical attention while an ambulance is going fast. If you want to work at a nursing home, they have rooms that are set up similarly. Early education and care, they have rooms with the little desks, little chairs, et cetera, really to give a feeling as to this is what you're going to be doing. So I think that their enrollment will continue to soar there as well. I do want to mention, and I hope all of you are aware, a few months ago, the legislature passed the most significant tax relief bill Massachusetts has seen in over a generation. We put dollars back into the pockets of people at every single income level. We increased the child and dependent tax credit. It's now the highest in the nation, helping young families and helping people who have adult dependents still living with them. We increased the taxing on an estate tax. We made changes to the earned income tax credit. That research has shown is the best tax relief for low income in particular. And research has followed families for years after they have gotten this earned income tax credit, where children that come from these families do better not only in K to 12, but school, but the rest of their life, their earnings has gone up because it provides more opportunities. We the Senate included housing provisions because we know that housing is so damn expensive in Massachusetts, and we're working on it. And we inserted two major provisions to produce more housing, market rate housing in our cities across the state, and some affordable housing. And that will help to produce tens of thousands of new units, hopefully helping people. And again, we will be doing more. The governor filed a housing bond bill, $4 billion bond bill. The House will take it up first, then it will come to the Senate. We will take it up. This is something we need to focus on. As Senate President, I've really tried to focus on making Massachusetts more competitive. And in my mind, that included the tax relief. I've been working towards free community college, getting people into the path of public higher education, closing our gaps in our workforce situation, lowering prescription drugs, the costs of prescription drugs. The Senate did a terrific prescription drug bill last year, hoping the House will take that up. Early education and care. We learned during COVID how expensive and hard it is for families to get early education and care. Do you realize the average cost to send your little one in Massachusetts? I won't even ask because I'm $26,000 a year. It's like college. It's like, how do families afford that? We need to lower that cost. We need to enable children who need to go to early ed and allow families who want to and need to send their child to early ed and care. So many people dropped out of the labor market during COVID, particularly women. So by giving some assistance and changing the way we do fund early education and care will allow more women to get back to work, again, decreasing our workforce gap and supporting our families. So the Senate will be taking up early education and care in the coming months. Prior to tax relief, I do want to mention we passed a budget of equally historic proportions. We rolled out aspects of free community college over 25. The Senate added for aspiring nurses to get more nurses into our healthcare. The budget also included $15 million for implementation and looking into how we can implement free universal community college starting next year. These initiatives are what I call the K to 12 change of Chapter 70 was known as the Student Opportunity Act. I believe Massachusetts needs more than just an act. We need a student opportunity plan. And that's why the Senate, and we've been focusing on, and we will continue to focus on reforming our early education and care. We have the K to 12 system, working pretty well, never 100%, but we could always make it better. And then public higher education for us to invest to get as many people who want to go to higher ed, who never saw that it was a possibility for them, whether they couldn't afford it, they didn't have the time, whatever it was, to try to get them into public higher education. So, because these students will be the next generation of employees, employers, and leaders right here in Framingham, right at the State House. Gosh, for all I know, it could be one of the next Senate presidents as part of it. We made historic investments, including $600 million into adult support services, $120 million for children's mental health services, and over $30 million to family resource centers, which Framingham has one. It's where families can go to if they need help. And we're working to have them all across the state. I know that in Framingham, the bottom line is that if you're struggling with mental health, Massachusetts should have your back. We should be able to help you. And I'm really proud that Massachusetts, the Senate led an initiative last session in reforming our mental health laws, propelling Massachusetts to be first in the nation with the provision of mental health and parity, to finally look at mental health as equal to physical health. So I don't know if you know, every year you can get a physical health exam through your doctor and your insurance pays for that. You can now get a mental health exam every year, and your doctor and your insurance must pay for that as well. So, I think that we're working, we'll continue to work. And in conclusion, I do want to say that I'm proud to be representing Framingham, and I look out at all of you here. I see so many people who have worked hard for so many years to make Framingham a better city, a better place, not only for you and your families, but for all of us. And for that, I thank you. This is a team effort. This is truly going back to Tikkun Olam and believing that we all must pitch in to make things better for people and for years to come. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all. I'm grateful to every single person here because you are the driving force in Framingham life and a beacon, helping to make Framingham a beacon of prosperity. And I look forward to the coming year and to the coming years, of us all continuing to work together towards common goals. So thank you very much.
Morning. Thank you for coming, and thank all the city officials for coming as well. I actually have two questions, but I really just want to focus on one of them.
Okay.
I mean, the first one very briefly is we need to improve transportation in this state. And by that, I mean train service. There's no reason I'm in my early 70s, and I know I grew up in New Bedford. And as a kid, they were always talking about a train service from Boston to there. Nothing's been done. There are many people who are unemployed down there. It's always been one of the highest unemployment areas in the state, even in the country. And it would benefit Boston or the greater Boston area for housing as well as employment. And the same thing going out west. But the one I really want you to answer is the state police. What is going on with the state police is disgusting. It's one of the most corrupt police forces, at least in our state, if not in the country. It is time something was done and it was cleaned up. It is not new. It may be becoming public new, but think about it. Who else rides up on your ass on the highway and forces you to move over, even if they don't have lights on? They're going for donuts. So really, something's got to be done about it. It's just disgraceful.
Tell me what you really think. Okay, first, transportation, I agree with you. We are putting more funds and for maintenance for not only the T, but to our RTAs. In fact, the Metro West RTA just started Sunday service. So that is a big milestone. As I mentioned to you, back in 2006, there was no such thing as an RTA. So, they are growing and will continue to grow. So that's great. And there has started construction on the South Coast Rail. We know when the commuter rail was from Boston through Natick, Framingham, Ashland, Southborough, and beyond, the growth and the economic development that enabled. So I certainly believe in that, as long as our current system is being maintained and kept up. We can't afford to have any trains catching on fire anymore. We really need to. And I think that the person, Phil Eng at the T, knows what he's doing. He seems to have had some great experience. So I'm hoping that he can get that under control. But, they have started the South Coast Rail, and we are working on north, east west, or west east, whatever you want to call it. Because I agree, we should have every area of the state accessible by public transportation. So, and the state police, I agree. I think that they need to have some changes. And on the horizon right now, the governor has a committee to choose a new head of the state police. The legislature changed the law when we did that police reform bill that was alluded to earlier. It was the first time we changed the language to enable the person who heads up the state police to come from outside the state police. Prior to now, the person who was the head of the state police had to come from the ranks. I understand there might be some benefits of that. I understand there might be some disadvantages, but we thought it was best to open it up. So we don't exclude that as a possibility, but we opened it up so that somebody from outside the state police could be the head. So stay tuned and see what happens.
This is another transportation comment, and I sort of apologize for it, but this is
okay.
some of my experience. I am probably fall into the category of a super commuter.
Could you just state your name, please? I'm sorry.
So my name is Russ
What's your
Donnelly.
first name? Okay.
So I'm probably a super commuter in a 21-day period. I commute to work 17 out of those 21 days. It's 38 miles one way. So I have a lot of time to think about stuff. One of the things I think about is that we don't need any more superchargers on the turnpike. That is not because I don't think people will be driving EV cars in the future. It's that we don't use the superchargers that are there on the turnpike anyway, because that's not where people charge. People charge at home or people charge at work. So I would ask you and Jack Lewis to concentrate on level 1 and level 2 chargers, such as apartment buildings and workplaces. The second comment is that there's a site called Coltura, Coltura. It's a mashup of CO2 and culture. And their recommendation is not to concentrate rebates on people unselected, but to concentrate rebates on people who drive the most and pay the most in terms of money for gas. This is those people who still drive a gas vehicle. You would get the most bang for your buck if you concentrated the rebates on those super users, as opposed to someone like me who bought a Prius car in 2013.
Okay, good idea. I do believe that we need charging stations all over, not just on the turnpike, because some people travel, and if you're coming from the south or from the north and you need to take the pike, by the time you get to the pike and you have an EV, an electric vehicle, the charge may be depleted. It really gets me when I hear that the ones on the pike are broken. And they are owned or serviced by a maintenance contract. We have to have a better system. They have to be working so that if people need the charge, they can get the charge. Otherwise, we're never going to get people to buy and use electric vehicles. We have to make it easy to do that. And that's infrastructure. There's like over $63 million for EV charges that has been around for years. Even, I don't know, trying to get even the Baker administration, and now we're trying to work with this administration to expand electric charging stations. So I hear what you're saying, but I think they should be around. They should be around apartments and workplaces as well. And we can maybe incentivize landlords or employers to build them so they're not fully government all funded, but there might be things that we can do there. And I'll take a look at the rebate issue. Thank you.
Thank you
Hi.
very much. Jack is my name. And, I love hearing all the new construction, all the great things happening. But on the other side of the ugly coin is we've got the business community from all over the country. Massachusetts has gone from one of the 9th most expensive states regarding taxes to now the 4th. Since 2021, the state budget has increased $15 billion. Revenues this year, yeah, I just read it.
Well, don't believe everything
right.
you read.
Revenues this year look like they're going to only be up about 0.3% over last year. And we added not the legislature, but through public voting, we added a 4% millionaires tax, which if you look at young entrepreneurs who hopefully their vision is to reach that kind of income, and they're going to look at Texas, Florida, South Carolina. They're going to look at other states.
I don't think so. Nobody really wants to live in Texas and South Carolina or Florida. Oh my God. We are much better.
I would agree with you. I still live here. But the truth is, to attract new business, new people to the state, which will create the places for the young people to work in new jobs. I really think the state needs to make themselves more attractive to the business community, and they're going to have to do the ugly word, which is cutting their budget. So I just wanted to ask you, do you see any vision of that happening? I know you've got a migration crisis. I know we've got the governor wants to put up people for, all kinds of hotels, long-term, life-term, whatever, but the money isn't there.
Right. I have to say, I am cautious and a little concerned over the state's revenue picture. But I've been here before. I was chair of Ways and Means in 2015, 2016, 2017, all the way through 2018, when we hit a recession and had to cut our budget over $1 billion that year. It's hard because, you might say that, first of all, I have never heard, and I will absolutely disagree, it has not grown $15 billion in 3 years. It has grown, yes. Some of that was still federal ARPA dollars that we incorporated into our budget and spent that boosted the bottom line. And now this year it grew by $1 billion, and next year at least $1.3 billion in the surtax, the millionaires surtax, the fair share, whatever you want to call it. That will give us an additional $1.3 billion, but that has allowed us to invest in our little kids, give them a better start, give meals to our kids. Our kids aren't going to learn as much as they sit in a classroom chair. They're not going to learn if their stomachs are grumbling and their heads are fuzzy because they're hungry. So we're giving them breakfast and lunch, and we're not asking the families to show that they can't afford it and then they'll get it. We're doing it for all of our children, getting rid of the stigma and the shame that used to happen. So I'm really proud of Massachusetts. We've started working for our public higher education. I'm the product of public higher education. If I hadn't had a chance to do that, I'm not certain. My father was going through severe financial difficulty. I'm not certain I would have even gone to higher education. So I am a firm believer, if that's what, the child that wants to go, if they want to do it, I'm not forcing it on anybody. but that should be available to them. So we are opening our doors for community college, but we're also giving a lot of grants to our state universities and our UMass system to help our students who need help with other costs, tuition, books, room and board, possibly some extra transportation if needed to get to and from, and other things, trying to help those that are in school stay in school and be successful in school. That is what we are doing with that funding. So we didn't have a great January. Again, I am not panicking. When I took over as Ways and Means Chair in 2015, increasing our rainy day fund, our stabilization fund, was one of my top priorities. I had partners in the House. We had a governor. We have increased it. We have over $8 billion in our rainy day fund. It's the highest it has ever been. Granted, if we had a severe recession, that's not going to fit everything. That's not going to fill every single gap, but it'll help. And we will continue to hold that and be cautious if and when we spend it. So we'll see what happens. But, the governor came out with her budget. The House will do its budget in April, as it always does. The Senate will do our budget in May. And then in June, House and Senate conference committees hash out the differences and hopefully get it to the governor's desk by July. So we'll see. We'll have to see. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, to know how our economy is going to go. All economists seem to say that they're not expecting a major recession. There might be a slowing of growth, but our unemployment rate remains really low. Our GDP is doing good. I mean, so there's some good and some caution.
My name is Mort. I wondered what, prior to Governor Baker's departure, he had formed a committee to assess traffic conditions in Massachusetts. That committee went away. Traffic has gotten worse.
Didn't traffic go away?
But furthermore, what's going to happen with the exit from the Turnpike into Cambridge? It's a massive problem in the morning, and also the exit to Newton Corner when you're coming into the work in the morning.
I take that almost every day myself. It's terrible. Traffic is like pre-COVID at this point. You have to plan at least an hour and a half to even 2 sometimes. It's terrible. It's terrible. And some companies are calling people back to work, not as much hybrid. I don't even know if a siren, if it's deadlock, would help. But, I think some of that is improving our public transit system. If we had a safe, reliable, cheaper commuter rail, I think more people would take that. And that ran more often, more frequently. I mean, I don't want to take the train if I get there and I am forced to spend 4 more hours in the afternoon than I really want to, because there's no train coming back. So we've been fighting, Jack and the rest of the delegation, myself, have been fighting for improvements in rail service and getting more trains to be more responsive to us and more reliable. So that's one thing. But transportation is a major thing. And my concern is under Baker, and it still is being discussed, if you commute into Boston, this, where the old rail yard is on your right, Cambridge is on your left, and you have Brighton. They've taken apart the rail yard, so it's just sitting there. And they're talking about straightening it out, which, Baker, with this funny story, he said, because I was not in favor of doing that, because they were going to get rid of one of the commuter train lines, make it harder for us to get in with all the traffic and construction. And he said, but they're straightening out the curve. I said, there's so many curves. Which curve? I mean, so if you straighten it out, it'll cut out 2 seconds. I mean, it's ridiculous. It will help Brighton and the city of Boston with redevelopment of the old freight yard. It will certainly help Harvard. And that's where they need to look for a lot of funds from, city of Boston and Harvard to pay for a lot of this. But because that would also redo Starrow Drive. And there was the drive, a lot of people were saying, cut down the Pike, get rid of one lane on the Pike so that Starrow Drive, and that's a great solution. Clearly, by nobody from the west of Boston, but they were all Boston people. So, my mantra has been that if we're going to do this, and the federal government, maybe giving us some money to look into it. First of all, this is a major project, unfortunately. So I have been pushing, and I think they're going to at least fix the bridge that's there so it doesn't collapse. It's a good thing to do. So at least hold that so that it's there. And then in the process, get funding and get a timeline, get a plan. This is where you may have seen 2 years ago, there were plans in the Globe and drawings about maybe having a little pathway or 1 lane or 2 lanes going into the Charles River right near Starrow Drive. There was that thought. There are all these different ideas, and a lot of it is for the city of Boston, improving aesthetics and traffic flow and pedestrian, which I certainly understand, but we have been a very loud and vocal voice. We're not going to cut out 1 lane on the turnpike. I mean, that would be even crazier. And if they're going to do this, they need to keep the same number of commuter train lines running. One of the plans was to cut out some of it. And I've been arguing that they should make the commuter train free during all of this. That would certainly keep people on it. And they've done it for, other things. So we will keep fighting this fight and making sure. And the other thing, I had a long fight with Baker when he was governor. I said, how are we going to pay for this? First time it was raised with me. How are we going to pay for it? See, Jack, I do look at funding. I am concerned. How are we going to pay for this? And I'm glad you're all seated, because the answer was tolls. I said, over my dead body. I said, that's not I'm not even bringing it to the Senate floor. It's not happening. So, we'll see what happens. And then, so in the reverse, we'll need federal funds, we'll need state funds, and whatever, but funds from Boston, funds from Harvard, and other private entities. If they benefit from this, let them put some of their funds into it too. But this should not put more burden on the Metro West commuters or taxpayers.
Hi, so Kathy from Framingham. You mentioned states like Texas and Florida, and we've seen a decrease across the country in women having autonomy over their health decisions with their doctor. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you're doing and we're doing in Massachusetts to keep Massachusetts a safe place for women to have decision-making over their own health with their doctors and their families.
Thank you. That is just one reason why I believe people may not want to go to Texas and Florida and some of the others. The legislatures there and governor are putting more than their hands in your pockets. They're putting them in your homes and making decisions for people that I believe they have no right to make decisions for. But I am very proud that Massachusetts has led the way, and we have codified into law the Roe Act, even though the current U.S. Supreme Court has. We did that a few years ago prior to this U.S. Supreme Court overturning the Roe Act. So it is part of our Constitution, part of our statute, and we will continue to hold that firm. We also have passed laws trying to, some of you may be aware that Florida and Texas and some of these other states that I speak to their Senate presidents when I go to conferences, and they have passed laws saying if one of their residents, if a woman comes to Massachusetts for an abortion, for their reproductive health care, it doesn't even have to be an abortion. If that woman comes to Massachusetts, they will come after that woman and put her in jail afterwards. Not only the woman, but if anybody helped her, her significant other, her family, her friends, an Uber driver could be subject to that law that might pick her up at the airport and bring her to reproductive care. Texas will come in with their long reach, or try anyway, with their long reach of their crummy little arms to pluck those people and bring them back to Texas and put them in jail. So we have passed laws saying in clear English that they have no jurisdiction here. The AG does not need to, and in fact should not cooperate with those states. The police should not, trying to protect as much as we can, as well as the providers who may perform women's health care services. We've tried to protect that as much as possible. And some of our laws have now been picked up by other states. And so we've become a model for successful healthcare laws.
Thank you. My name is John.
First, Karen, thank you for all you do for Framingham and for our Commonwealth. It's extraordinary, especially around mental health and our 4-year-olds. There are 400 4-year-olds in Framingham who don't get early childhood ed and don't get the same lease on life. So thank you. I wanted to ask a follow-up because your capable assistant, Mr. Giambetti, wouldn't. To the train question, will we be able to electrify as part of this the train from Boston to Framingham? And I know it goes back and forth. For those who don't know, it helps us with more trains and more efficiency, et cetera. Thank you.
Yeah, electrification of the commuter rail is something we are looking into. It is exorbitantly expensive too. So, again, we have to see what we could afford. There still is that, as well as our goals to be fossil fuel free by 2050. So I know that there are studies that are looking at that and maybe taking one line or a few lines as pilot programs to electrify. Eventually, I mean, it's kind of ironic when you think about probably all of the trains 50 years ago or more were electric. They were dirty electric, but they were electric. So now we need to see what kind of infrastructure do we have? What do we need? What lines are more conducive to starting out with? But eventually, the goal would hopefully be to have them all electric.
Hi, Karen. My name is Barbara. Thank
Hi.
you so much for coming, and
All
thank
right.
you to all the dignitaries as well. I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you.
Especially all of the good things to make Framingham more inclusive. It's very, very important. I do have a question about the elderly and about the arts. And I'm sort of surprised that if I'm looking at programs, I have to go to Natick instead of the Callahan Center. They have more to offer us, it seems. And also we go to TCAN instead of the Framingham place. I think those are private. I'm not really sure. I don't know if
They are private.
they're
yeah.
private.
Private,
So
nonprofit.
I'm not sure if we give any money to the arts.
Oh, God, yeah.
And I don't know anything about it. And again, Callahan, I think, could really offer so much to people in this community. And don't think it's enough because I've tried.
Okay, if there's
Thank you.
anybody here on Framingham Council on Aging, please see Barbara after the breakfast. It's so nice of you to volunteer to help out with this. You have to, once you say something like that, you can get sucked into it, which is great because it's great to have new ideas and fresh ideas. The state gives a lot of money to each in our budget, to each community for their senior center, for their elders. And then it's up to the community to figure out how to divvy that up. Each community, some have, we were recently at, I'm dating myself, we saw the Drifters at TCAN. The Drifters, yeah. And then recently too, we saw John Sebastian of the Love and Spoonful. I think all of you, many of you might remember him. And it's great to have that accessible as well. And Amazing Things is around, and now Hopkinton has. But those are all sort of grassroots community. They form their nonprofits that the state, they apply for grants from the cultural arts, Massachusetts cultural arts, that we give millions of dollars to each year. And there are certain things that we ask to share that with regional equity and different types of arts and humanities and culture and stuff like that. But seriously, if you feel there's something, I do suggest the Callahan Center is very receptive to suggestions, ideas, thoughts. And if you have some suggestions, I think that would be wonderful.
My name's Linda. I was thinking about commuting. Why is the burden always on the east-west commuter? Why can't we have toll roads for the north-south commuters? Now with electronic tolling, it would be so easy to put something on the expressway going north-south.
You're right.
Wouldn't hold anybody up. Be a nice revenue stream. About time.
Right. Oh, I agree. For many years, I filed bills to have tolls at our borders. When we go into New Hampshire, we pay a toll. When we go to other states, we pay a toll. They should pay a toll as well if it's such a great idea. And I have said to every governor and every transportation secretary, if it's such a great idea to have a toll on the turnpike, we should have a toll on every other major road as well. The response that I get back all the time is there's a lot of federal regulations and rules that regulate tolls. And number one, the road has to have started out being built by federal dollars. And so that's how they get control over it. I think, and I have tried to push, I believe me, I have tried. And that's why I said, don't even talk about or think about if you're going to be, even though you're fixing the pike for part, you're straightening out the curve, big deal. Don't even think about using tolls for that. And, it's interesting. A lot of people don't even think about the fact that we pay tolls, and not hardly anybody else in the state does. There is no other single issue that gets me as worked up as this issue, just to let you know. Because in my mind, and this is, a lot of what my Jewish upbringing of justice, whatever theory of justice you have, this is one thing. Again, if it's such a damn good idea for us to pay tolls on the pike, what about 495, 95, Route 3, and so many others, and the borders? But they would have, the government would have to push the federal government to give their okay, and they're not, they're not doing it now. They haven't given any approval for years. So there's always excuses, and there has to be a will. And clearly, I can tell you, if the toll issue came up on the pike starting it now, you would not have a Metro West delegation that would have tolerated that. We would have fought, and I believe prevented that from happening. it was different times and different people, but nobody wants to go back to their district, particularly, I'll be blunt, before election time and say, guess what? I just put a $2 toll on the road that you have to take every day to get home. You know, we have that. And so we raise this a lot and we fight to make sure that it's not, when they put the overhead toll things, the electronic thingies, whatever. They were planning on increasing our tolls in doing that. And we fought that back successfully. So it's always a fight and it's aggravating. But even the new Secretary of Transportation, Monica Jewett-Nutt, and I met, and she said, I know how you feel. My staff has already told me your thoughts on tolls. I said, well, good, because it hasn't changed. I need to hear more about what the plans are at this point with this new administration for the Alston-Brighton interchange and how that, because that will, you think you have a bad commute now. I mean, it's going to be worse. And we will do everything possible to try to mitigate that. So we'll keep working at it.